Hey to the most amazing nurses. It is Dr. V here with Morning Infusion with Dr. V podcast, where we are intentional about teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses. So good morning. So we have Marsharae Cage, my friend. So we met.
Good morning.
So the first time we met was in Dallas, correct?
Dallas, yes.
We were at a B&E conference there. And so tell me, like, if you had to give your bio, right? Tell us your bio.
Real quick. So been nursing since 2005. So what is that? I hadn't even done the math. That's almost 20 years. It's 23, so 18 years nursing. Let's see, mom of two, full-time nurse, telemetry nurse. I still work full-time, trying to fire my boss at some point. Um, let's see, serial entrepreneur. I've done a lot. I've had a lot of businesses over the last few years, from everything from wholesaling real estate to a used car dealership to um, proprietary school. So I stay busy. I do a lot.
So you did real estate and a used car dealership?
Yeah, so I was a realtor at one point. I decided that I didn't like the sales part, so I kind of got into wholesaling real estate. So I let my license kind of expire, and then I started wholesaling real estate. I did that for a little while, and actually I did fairly well. It was just it was very simple to do, but not easy to do, and it was a lot time consuming. But when you don't have a passion for something, you don't stick to it. And so that's kind of what happened with that. So even though I did fairly well with real estate wholesaling, um, I wasn't really passionate about it. So it became more of a task. It became more of a burden. And the same thing with the used car dealership. It became more of a task and a burden because I really wasn't into it. So then I ended up opening a school.
I love it. That is so true because when you don't have a passion for something,
Mm-hmm.
people think that, well, I'm just going to make money and I'm going to go into, whatever it is, and the money is going to create the passion, but the money really does not create
No,
passion.
no, not at all. It's actually the opposite. It's actually the other way around. The passion creates the money.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Because one of the things that I talk about is that, waking up every day, the mission is too valuable, right? And
Mhm.
to negate the mission. So that's hugely, hugely important. So tell me, I always ask people this question because it's an interesting question for me. So why did you even become a nurse? So were you a nurse whenever you were doing the real estate and the used
Oh yeah, I was a realtor and doing real estate. Well, I was a realtor in um 2011 through 2013. Um I was doing wholesaling a little bit before COVID. So 17, 18, we have the car dealership in maybe 15 to 17. So I kind of, it was just kind of, don't like this. Let me try this. Don't like this. Let me try this. And so um, all along, I've been nursing this whole time. But I would do like the weekend program, or I'm a PRN, or I only work 2 days a week. So the nursing's always been there.
Gotcha.
So what made me want to become a nurse? Oh, it was well, it was it's a couple things. Couple things. Um, First, um, family issues, mom having seizures, aneurysm, stroke. So we were in and out of the hospital for quite some time. And I just really didn't like what I saw. But with that said, mom also always said to me that, you know what, if you get into healthcare, you'll never not have a job. So, you'll always work. And that held strong and true when COVID happened. So, I I did. When I graduated high school, I wanted to go into business administration. Um, I just didn't want to go to the same college that everybody else went to. And the college that I wanted to go to, I didn't get accepted. So then you have to do what? You got to pivot. And so when I did that, I was like, okay, well, let me just take some time off because maybe this is not meant to happen the way it's happening. And so still, I hear my mom in my head, when you get into healthcare, you always have a job. It was either that or mortician. And so, I wasn't, I wasn't trying to do the latter. So anyway, that's pretty much how I got into nursing.
I love it. One of the things that I used to say all the time, because I was a ER nurse for about 15 years, and one of the things that I am very clear on, without a shadow of a doubt, is that whenever I will work to save your life. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
as soon if you ever pass away, I'm out. Okay, I like.
Deuces.
And so, like, I thought that I wanted to be a medical examiner, and then I hung out with someone who did an ME exam, and I was like, "Yeah, this is not me." And so I was like, "I can't do
Right.
that anymore." And so, that's for sure. So look, okay, so let's talk about, um, you going into business. So why did you go into business? So you went into the first businesses, the real estate and the used car dealership. So this business, what makes you want to do business?
It's innate. It's always been there. It's been there. I mean, my grandfather was a businessman, although he retired from Exxon, which is a chemical plant here, but he's always been a businessman. He's always had his own thing going, whether it was, gardening, and he would be the guy that you would see with the sweet potatoes and the greens and stuff selling it. He's had his own club. He has properties. He stayed busy. And so I was able to see that from a very, very early age. Um, and it's just I can even remember back in high school where it sounds cliche because I hear so many people and I see so many podcasts where they say, oh, I used to do this in school and sell this in school, but I was one of the ones that I was selling candy and cookies and all this stuff. So I can't remember a time. I'm trying to think. I can't remember a time where I didn't have some type of business savvy, business acumen, business bug. I can't remember a time where I was ever excited to work for somebody else.
Gotcha. And so what makes that, like, especially in healthcare? So
Mhm.
give me some instances, because like, explain to me like some instances where you didn't like for to work for someone else, and the it was validated via some instance that happened,
It was
because
validated several times with the same. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. You can take care of a person. I don't know why this camera and it gets stuck on the craziest poses. But you mentioned something earlier when you said you can take care of a person as long as they were alive. You gonna work them. And I always felt that way, like you're not dying on my watch. But then when they died on my watch, I'm like, okay, like the Lord had to humble me because that was the attitude that I had. Like, and it had been years. And I'm telling you, I worked everywhere from med surg to long term care, telemetry, labor and delivery. It had been years um before I had a patient actually die on me, because that was just my attitude. Like, if I'm your nurse and we working together, the first inkling of a sign that I see of anything, we gonna be on it, because I feel like, we need to prevent whatever I think may be finna happen. And then when I had my first patient pass on me, that was like a gut punch. Um, to the stomach. Is I feel like God had to humble me and show me that you're not in control. Like, as much as you think you are, and as much as I allow you to feel that way, you're not in control. So I had to be humble from that standpoint, but I also had to be, and this happened in long term care at this point, but I also had to be humbled, because I'll never forget the way that the face that that family member had, because the family member just happened to be there. That's who let us know that the patient, was looking a little weird to her. So I'll never forget the look that that lady had on her face when, we had to just stop. Like, it was no, we couldn't continue to code her. And that's not ever news that you want to deliver. And like, even in a hospital setting, it happens more often there, of course. And like I told you, I still work on the telemetry unit, and although we don't have a lot, it's still not, it's depressing. It's really, really, really depressing. And so I guess what did it for me to make me just want to get out of it was when I was working in labor and delivery. I worked at Northside Hospital in Atlanta, and Northside delivers more babies than probably any other hospital that I know of in the United States. Last time I was there, they said they were second to New Delhi, so they were like number 2 in the world. And
Wow.
when I left long term care, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of watching them go. I want to watch them come. And so I'm going to, deliver these babies. And I'm thinking this all going to be happy, happy, joy, joy. And I get there and we got stillborn babies. We got mamas dying. I'm like, I can't do this. I didn't last 2 years. I didn't last 2 years. And so that's when I knew I had to pivot to do something else. And so still I had this business bug brewing, and I knew it was going to be something, because I still don't want to let nursing go. So I knew it was going to be something where maybe I had to just kind of combine and blend nursing and whatever it was. Um, and so with some trial and error, with different ideas, I still really couldn't pinpoint exactly what I wanted to do until I went to a skilled and rehab unit, which I had been kind of working on and off in skilled and rehab for several years. But at this particular point, I was director of nursing at this facility. So, once we get on the other side and you're getting into that administrative role, you start to see some things, and you start to get in some different rooms and hear some yeah, and so I wasn't feeling that either. But what I did realize and learn was that there was a need for some good, well trained, competent staff, not just nurses, but CNAs as well. But what made me get into the CNA portion more so was because I feel like that's the foundation. Like, no matter, what anybody thinks, like, those nurse aides, certified nurse aides, they're with the patients about 80% of the time. So they know these patients more than anybody else in the hospital, really. So I'm like, we need to establish a good foundation, because it was a lot of them that I work with that just wasn't cutting the cheese. Just wasn't.
One of that is a like you said so much in such like all the things, because I think one of the things that we do is that we are on this side of healthcare, and like we're at the bedside, we're taking care of the patient, and then we get into administration, we see a very different side of healthcare,
Oh,
and
indeed.
we understand that it's not what we thought it was going to be.
Right.
And, when you talk about, because, I remember when Damar Hamlin passed out on the field and he essentially coded, right?
Yeah.
And they talked about the trauma that was experienced during that time. And the reality is that, we experience that trauma all the time, right?
Indeed.
And, it's the expectation that we're supposed to just be okay with it, when the reality is that we're not okay with it.
Indeed.
And so, and another thing is that, I remember someone saying to me, well, you're taking nurses from the bedside. And I was like, no, baby, I am supporting the nurses at the bedside, right? Because
Really.
we're doing it in a different way. Because the way that we have done it in the past, it's just not working. I mean, it is not working. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And we as nurses, we are able to really change the face of healthcare as we know it. So, at the end of the day, you can't worry about what other people say. You have to just move with the mission that you have, for sure. Now, I want to talk about your partnership. So you had a partnership with someone, and what happened? Now I'm gonna go to commercial for just a second. You think about that question. We're gonna come back
Okay.
and talk about it, okay?
Our live event is going down twice a year in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, called the Millionaire Nurse CEO Conference. We will be covering the blueprint and master plan to grow a wealthy and flourishing company. We love that you listen to the podcast, but we want you in the room. We will be sharing insights on marketing and sales strategies so that you are able to create more impact and make more money, creating more freedom so that you can do the things that you love. So join us for the nursing event of the century. Go to vpnursing.com to sign up for this life-changing event.
All right, so let's talk about this partnership. Now, it's gone wrong. So let's talk about that. So what happened?
Ooh, child. So, as you guys know, I do have an allied health school, and we do entry-level healthcare education. So CPR, phlebotomy, CNA, and I really, really focus strongly and hard on the CNA portion, especially since COVID. Yeah, I know I don't even have to say that the demand is crazy for certified nurse aides. So even though I teach phlebotomy, I don't teach that as often as I do with the certified nurse aides, because it's just not as high of a demand. It's not as high of a need. So we're trying to meet the need right now. With that said, it took some hell and high water to get this school open. Because of all it's heavily regulated. I'm in Louisiana, so Louisiana Department of Health, the Board of Regents, etc. With that said, me going into this, I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. So I started off with a partner, um, which she's also a nurse as well. Um, when we originally started doing all the research and trying to submit documents and everything that we needed to start this was late 2019, I want to say. No, late 2020, early 21. So at this point, we're in the height of COVID. Um, and I guess life happened on her end, as none of us are exempt from. Um, and she just could not move forward. And so I had to pivot because I literally had to start over. And when I say start over, I mean because originally we started everything together. So her name was on everything. So I had to go back and revise bank accounts, the application that we submitted to, the board and the Department of Health. I had to go back and revise operating agreements. Like everything had to be redone, revised. And also, it was a hard hit from a financial standpoint because of going into this. I'm like, okay, so everything is going to be pretty much divided in half as far as the financial responsibility. And then when she had to back out, that left the ball in my court. And so I was fully responsible for everything financially. Um, and so I think people think when they set out, they have these great ideas, and they want to open this business, and they set out and they think it's just going to be linear, like a straight line from A to B, not knowing it's going to be ups, downs, zigzag around, and and everything else in between. And I'm people. I'm people, because that's what I thought. Okay, I'm gonna open this school. I'm gonna produce some CNAs or whatever. And not. I mean, I got knocked down repeatedly, with life happening to me as well, because I kind of mentioned to you some personal life things happening. But and that's what I think happened with her. She couldn't deal with being a full-time mom, wife. They had some issues over there, as far, we're in Louisiana again, so we, in the midst of COVID and stuff, we had storms, hurricanes. And so I think that was the last straw for her, because they had some damage, um, not to her actual home, but the in-laws. And so that was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back for her. And she was like, I have to eliminate something, because I can't work and do home and, kids and full-time mom and life happening and this. And that was a lot. The school was a lot. It was so I guess it was this process of elimination. And I was eliminated, which ended up being a blessing at the end of the day.
I think that's so valid, and that's the reason why, because we're talking about, I have meetings every morning, and one of the things that we talked about this morning is, TD Jakes it rings in my head right all the time when he said,
Hmm.
everybody that I do business with, I have a contract, right? And so the contract is enforceable until the contract is not enforceable, until, and that's one of the things that, because I've had a partnership before and it dissolved. And one of the things that saved us was the fact that we had a contract in place.
Hmm.
Had a contract in place. It worked really well. And so if you wanted to exit the contract, you had full ability to exit the contract. And all those things were stated out in the contract in order to ensure that you were not you weren't moving forward without that. And that's the thing. You business with no one without the contract signed and without things done for sure. So that's super.
That's a very important piece. That's a very important piece, that you mentioned that. And I think also, when people think about business, they're thinking about what? The fun stuff, the money and marketing. That's what they want to do, money and marketing, because that's fun. But they don't think about, the legalities and the foundation that you have to establish with that. And so you were spot on with that. You were spot on with that.
So super important. So now tell me about your school. So you decided that you wanted to do this school. So tell me a little bit about the school.
Yep, yep, yep. So Heart Academy, Heart is an acronym. It stands for Healthcare Education and Resource Training. Because in my head, not only did I want to assist these CNAs with some entry level healthcare training, but give them some resources as well. So the resources, that's kind of how the CPR came along. We kind of coach them as far as soft skills, because a lot of them either freshly graduated out of high school, or they might be in an underserved community where they just don't get the soft skills. So and again, another experience I had as a director of nursing, I had CNAs coming for interviews with bonnets on. Um, I'm like, okay. When I figured out, because I thought maybe she was a family member or something. When I asked her, was she there for the interview? She was like, yeah. I'm like, okay, no, thank you. Have a good day. Like, have a good day. Because if you don't think enough, you know what I'm saying? But this is like a job interview. So if you come to the interview to get the job looking this way, I don't know how you're going to show up to work. So I'm like, and I tell my kids all the time, like, truth is stranger than fiction. A lot of the stuff we can't make up. So, I'm like, we definitely gonna get some soft skills going. What do you need to do, say, where, act, your posture, all this type of stuff when you're going on job interviews. You need to make yourself marketable. So, we do a lot of that. We actually just wrapped up a class yesterday. I had a group of students that finished. They're super excited. And the most of my students are, for the most part, aspiring nurses. But I've had pre-med students, I've had respiratory therapists, I've had business owners. Um, is It's just a wide spectrum of the people. You'd be surprised of the people that want to be CNAs, and a lot of them want to pivot and do other things. Some of them are PCAs, and they pretty much do the same thing CNAs do, but just don't get paid. You know, the CNA pay.
So, you mentioned something that is very valuable. Okay, so because what you said was, you have to make yourself marketable. And
Hmm.
what happens a lot of times is that, when you are working for someone else, and I mentioned this the other day, that when you're working for someone else and you are, then you go into business, some of the same skills that you use when you are working for someone else is the same skills as you're going to use whenever you go into business, right? So
Indeed.
your marketable skills, your ability to persuade a client to take their medicines or a patient to take their medicines,
Hmm.
right? Those are the same skills. That's kind of the same skill set that you do. I mean, we will spend hours. I can tell you, there was one lady who was diabetic and she was determined she won't want to take that medicine.
Hmm.
And I spent a long time in that room trying to convince her to take her medicine and
Oh, indeed.
understand what the end result would be, right? But
Yeah.
that's you're selling them on taking their medicines.
Oh, indeed.
You're selling other people on changing their lives because you're changing lives, right?
Indeed.
You're changing lives here, and
In
so
fact,
and it's cute, it's cool.
I don't recommend you start a business or open a business without being an employee first.
That's that's a good point. And so, tell me why. Expound on that. I know.
Because I I feel like one, it's kind of like, think of it as like a little internship, and you kind of watch the way these big corporations, because most of us work, if you're in healthcare, you're working for a big corporation, either it's a hospital or long-term care or whatever, and you can kind of get some jewels and some, see what they do as far as the way they run their corporation. Where I work at, they don't you don't even really talk to a person when you're calling in. You get occurrences, and once you meet this number of occurrences, you're out. So they don't care who grandma died. Where I worked at, the other corporation, they didn't, they talked to a person, whoever the supervisor was. You had somebody grandma died 3 times in the same year. So we not, we're not going for that. So, but you get a chance to see like what professionalism look like, their policies and procedures. You get the, and kind of an inside scoop of, maybe kind of, and I took away a lot. Like, I took away a lot. Being a director of nursing, and again, being on the other side and not the bedside, I learned a lot, and I implement a lot of that stuff.
That is key for sure. Because when I think about numbers, right? So we used to, in the emergency department, we were all about the numbers, right?
Mhm.
Door to drug, the door to admission, the readmission numbers, all those numbers, right? The reality
Mhm.
if you pay attention to those numbers, the reason why they're paying attention to those numbers is because it's evidence-based practice when as it relates to patient care.
Mhm.
It's the same thing in your business. You have to pay attention to your numbers. If your numbers are not good, you have to make sure that what gets measured gets managed. If you don't
All of your KPIs.
exactly all the time, and if you don't
Mhm.
measure it, then here we go. Then you're out of business, and then you don't know why, but it's because you didn't measure your, and it's boring, right?
Indeed, indeed.
It's
And
not,
you most definitely have to inspect what you expect.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
I love talking to you, Marsharae. Listen,
Girl,
um,
we're gonna have to do this again.
So so now tell us where we can find you.
Oh, let's see. I'm on Facebook heavily, Instagram. So I'm Marsha X Cage on Facebook or the Heart Academy LLC on Facebook. The same thing with Instagram, Marsha X, because I don't have a middle name. That's why that X is there. So Marsha X Cage, Instagram, the Heart Academy LLC, Instagram. I'm Marsharae 1, like the number 1. So Marsharae, Marsharae, and the number 1 on TikTok. And I'm Scrubs and Heels on YouTube. So SCRUBZ in the letter N and then Heels, HEELZ.
Okay, all right. Well, I love it. I love it. I love it. So we are having our master class is coming up. The next one is July 11th. We have them every month pretty much. So I mean, if you missed that one, then you can go to the next one. But it's free, but you can purchase a ticket to ask me questions. So we look forward to seeing you at the master class. But outside of that, you guys, thank you, Marsharae, for coming on. Like all
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm just super excited about us just kind of hanging out with each other. So to the audience, you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day, and then we'll talk to you later.